Then I said, you do realize that none of you are normal, right? You're telling me that I should kill my father, but I barely know the guy. And then Bucky said, I understand, but our father Yujiro Hanma is a very bad man and he's evil. Bucky said, and then I said, I know, but maybe he can change. And then Bucky laughed and said, no dude, he's never going to change. And then Bucky Hanma said, you don't know our father like I do. He's tried to kill me more than once just because I wanted to be normal. And then I asked Bucky, so do you have a girlfriend? And then he said yes. And then I said, I have 2 beautiful wives myself, and one of them is a SHIELD agent. Her name is Natasha Romanoff and she calls herself Black Widow. And then Bucky said, I saw her and she's gorgeous. And I said, thanks man. And I said, you know, these superheroes are actually very powerful, Bucky. Maybe you might want to fight some of them, Bucky. And then Bucky said, I actually want to fight the Hulk just to see if I can beat him. And then I said, I don't feel the need to fight like you and Yujiro Hanma. I just want to help people, that's all. And then Bucky said, oh, I already know you love to fight, you just don't want to admit it to yourself. And then I said, yes, you're right, but we don't have to, and I know it, and I was an army ranger. I have fought and killed many bad people with my bare hands and it's nothing special. And then Bucky said, I know you're powerful and you can kill Yujiro Hanma. I know you're powerful and I can sense it. And I asked, why do you want Yujiro dead, Bucky? And then he said, because he killed my mother. And then I said, I understand, I had to protect the women I love from being killed by terrible people, but I didn't kill them because I have too much blood on my hands already. After I was done talking to Bucky Hanma, I said, I will come with you to see Yujiro Hanma and you and I will fight Bucky, but I won't fight you to the death. And then I said, I can do it. I can kill Yujiro Hanma because he doesn't stand a chance against me, and I am also bringing my wives Natasha Romanoff and Jennifer Hills. And then I said, but first I will help the Avengers deal with Loki, and since Bucky Hanma and Jack Hanma were helping us, we easily defeated the Chitauri invaders and Loki. Me and Hulk slammed around Loki like a rag doll and Loki was sent back to Asgard, and I helped save New York City. And when I went back to my apartment, I checked on Katie to see if she was okay, and Maria Hill from S.H.I.E.L.D. said that Georgie fellow came back, but I took care of him. And then I asked Maria Hill, did you kill him? And then she said yes, because he was a terrible person and he told me the truth about him and his family after I interrogated him at gunpoint, so that's why I killed him. And then I said, I understand, I'm going to check on Katie, I'll be back in a while. And then I walked up and knocked on Katie's door and she answered and said, it's you, I'm so glad to see you're okay, come in. And then I went inside her apartment and then Katie immediately locked the door really quickly. And then I said, I just came to tell you that I will be leaving soon. And then I heard Katie's door lock and I asked Katie, what are you doing? And then she said, something I've been wanting to do to you for the first time I saw you. And then Katie began to take off all her clothes and then I said, whoa, are you sure you want to do this? And then she said, you're so handsome and I can't resist anymore. And Katie took off all her clothes and I noticed she's actually very beautiful but also very petite and skinny, and I prefer curvy women, but she's very beautiful. And then she quickly ran over to me and she began kissing me passionately, and then suddenly she took off my belt. And then I said to myself in my mind, interesting, she's done this before. And then suddenly she pulled down my pants and then Katie giggled cutely and squeaked cutely, and then she said, oh my god, your penis is as big as my arm. And then she said, it's gorgeous. And then Katie started deep throating my 12-inch penis, and then I said, oh my god, Katie, I'm going to come. And then I came in her mouth and then she began moaning cutely while she swallowed all my cum, and then she gasped for air and she said, oh my god, baby, that tasted so good. And then she pushed me onto the bed and then she quickly got on top of me in cowgirl position, and then she slowly stuck my large member in her vagina, and then I began to moan and I said, oh my god, you're so tight, Katie. And then Katie smiled like a pervert and she said, oh my god, baby, yes, I fucking love it. And for about 4 hours Katie rode me in the cowgirl position and she began to enjoy it very much, and then I moaned loudly and then I embraced her and I put my big muscular arms around her and I sat up and held her gently while Katie continued to ride my member in the cowgirl position. And then I came inside Katie's vagina and then she moaned loudly and Katie had a massive orgasm and she became sweaty and tired. Then finally fell asleep from exhaustion and I held Katie in my arms.